I am President of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me.
Hi, I'm Eli Stokos. I'm a White House reporter for the Los Angeles Times based in Washington, D.C. President Biden today finally addressed the nation about the situation in Afghanistan, where the Taliban took the city of Kabul, the capital city, took control of the entire country over the weekend, and where really we've been seeing all the imagery of a regime in collapse that President Biden said we were never going to see when he announced the U.S. withdrawal a few months ago. This is very reminiscent to a lot of folks of what happened in Saigon in 1975. We've seen the Taliban moving through the streets, people running in fear, trying to get to the airport. We saw thousands of people today flooding the tarmac at the airport, grabbing on to a departing military aircraft, really harrowing images. And so the pressure had been building on President Biden to come out and defend his decision and the exit as it was manifesting in Afghanistan. And now we're going to take a look at 5 key moments from that speech.
I am President of the United States of America, and the buck stops with me.
So this is the kind of thing that sounds good when presidents say it. Harry Truman famously said, "The buck stops at my desk, the president's desk." And this is the president trying to look like he's owning this crisis. But if you listen closely to the full speech, he was much more comfortable owning the initial decision to end the war in Afghanistan after 20 years, which is popular with the American public, but he had a harder time really fully owning what we've seen playing out over the last few days and weeks, the chaos in Afghanistan. He did not answer a whole lot of questions in this speech about why the execution of the departure seemed so botched.
The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight.
Saying things unfolded more quickly than they had predicted was about the closest thing to a mea culpa that you heard from President Biden in these remarks, at least when it comes to the messy exit and the scenes that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. He blamed it, though, on Afghan leaders leaving the country, on Afghans after 20 years of American blood, sweat, tears, and treasure, the Afghan military and government not being able to stand up.
I've argued for many years that our mission should be narrowly focused on counterterrorism, not counterinsurgency or nation building.
What Biden is saying here is basically that the initial mission in Afghanistan, which obviously was a response to the 9/11 terror attacks 20 years ago, that mission crept into something other than counterterrorism. Al-Qaeda was rooted out. We all know bin Laden. They finally got him about a decade ago. And ultimately, what Biden was saying, what he believed was happening in Afghanistan was kind of a half-hearted attempt at nation building, trying to stand up a new democratic government of Afghanistan. And he didn't believe the people there were nearly as invested as they should have been, and just doesn't believe that this is really what American foreign policy should be doing in the world.
American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
He believes that Afghanistan was not as invested in this as America was. And so if at the end of the day, they were, run over by the Taliban, then they were going to have to live with the consequences. It's a pretty callous point of view in some ways for a president who has embodied empathy at so many points throughout the campaign and his presidency. But this is the realpolitik of Joe Biden's foreign policy. And he believes that, again, American public opinion is on his side. The images, they're gut-wrenching to watch, but he believes that the country supports the decision to withdraw.
I know there are concerns about why we did not begin evacuating Afghans civilians sooner. Part of the answer is some of the Afghans did not want to leave earlier, still hopeful for their country.
So we began with the clip of the president saying, "I'm the president, the buck stops with me." But he's taking no ownership, no responsibility for the failure to plan and to come up with a plan to get the tens of thousands of Afghans who served alongside U.S. forces and who now face violent retribution from the Taliban if they remain in the country. No plan to get them out. And this was, I think, the moment in the speech that has drawn the harshest reaction, at least from veterans and military groups. because the president is really saying, it's not on us. The bigger reason that this didn't happen was that the Afghan people didn't want to leave because they thought the country might hold together and the government might be able to fend the Taliban off, which there's just been no evidence of that based on what reporters have seen on the ground. And secondly, that the government told them not to organize a mass exodus to avoid triggering a crisis of confidence. And if you look at the pictures now, obviously, this is a crisis with thousands of Afghans trying to flee. Tonally, and in terms of the message, this was a very defiant, resolute commander-in-chief who was confident about the decision he made. Again, that's the overarching decision to end the American involvement, the military involvement in Afghanistan. I don't know if the images and the heartache that people feel watching people flee, watching the Taliban take over Kabul, I don't know if that heartache will be felt across the country, if it will change public opinion. We're going to have to wait and see. For more coverage, you can head to latimes.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Eli Stokols in Washington. We'll see you next time.